Hello, and welcome to the Friday Night Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and during the next half hour, we'll be speaking with several very talented authors about their newly released books, what their inspiration was for creating their unique stories, and why it would be a great book to read and share with your friends and family. We could all use more biblical wisdom, and this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable offers just that. The book is called Wisdom and Beyond, a 9-week devotional study on biblical wisdom and grace by author Dr. Lafe A. Murray from Christian Faith Publishing. Lafe, thanks for being on the show.
Great to be here.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this devotional.
Well, it came out of, after reading 40 Days that Rick Warren had written, years ago. I had used the same format. So this is the format of basically a Bible study that would be, conducted maybe on a Sunday, and then through the week, the people would be able to read more in depth of what they had studied. So I set it up on that criteria, and then it started out as kind of a 6-week study, and then it advanced to a 9-week study as I learn more about grace and wanted to include that in the subject.
Give people kind of a little overview on some of the things that you go over in this devotional so they can get a sense of what to expect.
I, as I became a pastor, would try to preach on the subject, and over the years I failed so miserably. I finally I had 3 prepared sermons, and they were so dry and boring and awful that I just asked God, please don't make me preach these again. I know the subject's important, but I had no clue about wisdom, and I began to beg God to teach me about the subject and began to go to His Word. And one particular verse really stood out, and I began to meditate on that and began to pray on that the beginning of wisdom is to fear the Lord. And the thought process really advanced to, what is the middle of wisdom? What is the end of wisdom? If we have a beginning point, what's the outcome? What's the result of wisdom? And then it came to my awareness that the outcome was having a great relationship with God. So it's a relational thing that is advanced in wisdom, and then that became a central core of wisdom, and then virtue was added to it eventually as I studied more about the subject of wisdom, and then the understanding part or the mental part of wisdom became. So those 3 parts of wisdom is kind of the focus of the book.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to get this book published and to be able to share your message?
They were really easy to work with. I mean, they came to it, they presented what they had to offer, and right away I was really happy with what they were offering and what they were bringing to the table, and I thought the cost was reasonable, and I thought everything they wanted or needed me to do was reasonable, and, they're a good publisher.
Is there an overall message that you hope comes across with this devotional?
Yeah, I have a definition of wisdom that I have throughout the book, and if I could read that real quick. Wisdom is the absolute, never-changing knowledge of God. It existed before anything else and has remained pure. It grows in the person's life with faithfulness, leading to spiritual skills or gifts. It opposes foolish behavior and beliefs. It encourages virtuous living and a close relationship with God. Wisdom and grace are both manifold, having parts that make them complex. Truth and grace combine to make wisdom. Wisdom is personified as a woman by Solomon in the Old Testament and is personified again in the New Testament in the person of Jesus. That was a definition I put together years ago, and I haven't even changed one word of it because all of it has been proven to be what I'm trying to present in the book.
The book is called Wisdom and Beyond, a 9-week devotional study on biblical wisdom and grace by author Dr. Lafe A. Murray from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick-and-mortar stores. Those are just a handful of the locations. And Lafe, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, and sure appreciate the time and appreciate the opportunity.
One of my favorite stories growing up were the kind of stories where animals came to life, and that's what I think is at the heart of this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The book is called Meet Jebby, Jenny, and Laddie Boy by author Sarah Ankney from Christian Faith Publishing. Sarah, thank you for being on the show.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this story.
Well, it's actually 3 stories in one, and even though they're fictionalized, we're all based on some nonfiction situations that occurred. The one about Jebby was about a little chipmunk that had some fun with a gladiola bed, and we wondered what was going on. And Jenny was about a story about a little bird in search of a home that was actually based loosely on a story that someone told me that happened at a hotel about a little bird that wandered in and then left with one of the guests of the hotel. And then the story of Laddie Boy was actually about 2 puppies that we had. One was Little Bit of Love, and the other one was Laddie Boy. It was the first time we went from being a 1-puppy household to a 2-puppy household, and the story came about thinking how the puppies might have reacted when we weren't around.
Now, what inspired you to write these stories? Where did that all kind of begin?
Well, I always liked writing, and I always wanted to be an author from the age of, it was actually from 2nd grade on. And then I almost became published when I was 16, with a local publisher in my hometown. But then the publisher went bankrupt, and that took care of that for a while.
Now, who's the target audience for this book? What age range did you have in mind, or is this kind of the book that anybody who reads it, kids to adults, are really going to enjoy it?
The child's book, would be reading to family and hopefully giving the children some quality family time, and especially with what's going on now in our nation, that would be something that, they could do together and make some memories.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to see your book come to life on the page and to be able to share these stories?
Wonderful, and it also meant an awful lot, too, because my mother is no longer with us, but she was able to see my first children's book published.
Oh, that's great. Now, is this something you're going to do again? Maybe do you have more stories to tell? Are you working on anything new? Yeah,
I have a second children's book in the works and also my first adult novel.
Oh, excellent. Well, we'd look forward to those. Now this book, Meet Jebby, Jenny, and Laddie Boy, when people read this, whether it's, kids reading it or having it read to them or even adults reading this to and with kids, what's the most important message you hope comes across from these stories?
Well, the most important message is that kids are special and they need to think of others, and it's an alternative to all the stuff that you see on TV for kids that's showing violence. The book is not violent. It's written in a way that children will enjoy, but I also wrote it in a way that anyone reading it to a child will enjoy it too. Because even though growing up I loved Dr. Seuss, I remember my parents saying they had the books almost memorized, so there's things that are written in there that'll make even an adult chuckle and smile and get something out of it.
The things we're going through in our nation are so tough right now, but I think it's a great opportunity, like you kind of mentioned earlier, for families to get together and read together. Well, I encourage everyone to pick up their copy today. The book is called Meet Jebby, Jenny, and Laddie Boy by author Sarah Ankney from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And Sarah, thank you for being on the show.
Okay, well, it's great being on.
This next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I'm really intrigued to find out more about this because it has a lot of intriguing stories. The book is called In the Company of a Known Felon by author Vic Frierson from Fulton Books. Vic, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Now tell everybody a little bit about your book.
In the Company of a Known Felon, it tends to take a kind of a different look on the topic of prison reform, one which has certainly been explored many, many times and in many, many volumes before. But hopefully we've taken a different approach to to it, or at least try to expose a different potential relevance for having the discussion about why, in my view and the view of the 8 other inmates that I interviewed for the book, the prison system itself needs to be reformed, not for the benefit of the inmates, or not solely for the benefit of the inmates, but also, and I think this is the surprising part or the unique part, also for the benefit of society at large.
Now, what inspired you to write this book and tackle this subject?
Yeah, because, no secret, I had a brush with the law that landed me for a brief stint in a federal prison camp in Cumberland, Maryland. And it was my literally first foray into that whole environment. And I went into the experience with an entirely different perception of what to expect, what it was, what it entailed, and what opportunities existed for not just me, but for anyone who encountered the system. So it was on the basis of the misconception and the extent to which my perceptions were debunked when I got there that I said, oh my goodness, anybody who knows me knew I was going to write something about my experience, because that's kind of what I've done for the course of my life. But I think anyone who reads the book will be kind of surprised, or at least enlightened by what I expose or attempt to expose in the book about how just far from reality the average person, the average American taxpayer's perception is of the prison experience and what to expect from someone who's been in it.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to be able to get your book published and to be able to get your message out there?
It was far easier than I anticipated, because all I did was put the manuscript out for consideration. And next thing I knew, they were calling me and were saying, hey, we have a keen interest in publishing your book. And it went far more smoothly than I had anticipated going into it. And the experience to date, up to the point of this actual interview, has been sort of seamless. It's been kind of effortless on my part, as long as I did my due diligence and everything that they asked me to do in the way of editing and offering notes and feedback and all that.
Now, when people read this book, In the Company of a Known Felon, what do you hope is the most important thing they get from this book? What's the most important message here?
Yeah, the most important message is that the prison experience is supposed to be twofold. On the one hand, it is for the purpose of punishment, and that is indisputable, and everybody embraces that, as do I, in the interest of preserving order, societal order. But on the other hand, prisons bear the responsibility of affecting, or at least attempting to affect, genuine rehabilitation of every single person in their care, control, and custody. So that's what I hope that the average reader will come away with, is a recognition of the extent to which they miserably failed in that endeavor.
In a country and a society that is in dire need of a lot of reform in a lot of different areas, it's nice to see prison reform being brought to the forefront, and I think this is an important book to really open people's eyes to that. And I encourage everyone to pick up their copy. The book is called In the Company of a Known Felon by author Vic Frierson from Fulton Books. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores, just a handful of the locations. And Vic, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
This next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I'm really excited to find out more about, because I think it's going to be a great book for kids, and I think even adults reading this too, and with kids will learn a lot. The book is called The Horse and the Fox by author Steve James from Christian Faith Publishing. Steve, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Chris. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this story.
The Horse and the Fox is a story about compassion and commitment. The book uses make-believe talking animals, and it's based off of like an old pattern of fox being hunted for sport. It tells the story of Thunder the Forest and Freddie the Fox. Freddie had been captured by farmers in order to satisfy the desire to have a fox hunt. And Thunder, Bunjo the dog, and Willie the raccoon are characters in the book, and they come up with an elaborate plan in order to free Freddie. And the book takes you through their elaborate escape plan.
Now, what inspired you to write this story and create these characters? Where did that all kind of come from?
As Christians, we believe God directs our thoughts and patterns. And so I woke up one morning in 2011 and actually had the complete story in mind So basically, I sat down, like I usually do when I wake up with a thought. I sat down on my computer and began writing the story. The book took me about a week to write all 31 pages of the story. So, and I pretty much wrote it because I'm a one-track-minded person. I call myself a dreamer. And so once I started writing, I just kept at it, and it took about a week to complete it.
Now, if you're talking about a target audience, who's kind of the target for this book? What kind of age range did you gear this towards?
Because of the complexity of the plot of the book, it may be viewed to be a little bit more than what toddlers can really absorb. So I would have to say the target reader would actually be between the ages of 8 to 16 years old. And I say this age group, Chris, because I think the excitement of the plot would keep their attention, and they would really enjoy it. I also, with the publisher, I had it classified as a nighttime storybook because younger children could possibly relate to it if it's read to them by their parents at night and kind of explain to them as they read and maybe have questions. I think it would be a good nighttime story for younger children.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to see your book come to life on the page and to be able to share this story?
Barbara Kingsley was my publication specialist, and she worked with me step by step each day, each week, and my concerns, I would shoot it to Barbara, and she would get back with me. So I really enjoyed the process and the whole Christian Faith Publishing experience, and I do recommend that to anyone that does have a vision of writing a book and putting it out there on the market.
If you could say there's one overall message, the most important message of this story that the readers get, what would you hope that would be?
Chris, the ultimate goal of The Horse and Fox is to teach children and young adults how important it is to love all God's creation and diversity. Even though, I use animal characters to tell the story, the reader can relate this to having compassion on human beings as well and our diversity of races and cultures. It simply expresses to the reader the need to put their faith in action and to be willing to help others no matter what their race is.
Well, that's such a great message that I think it's important to instill in kids at a young age, and we as adults could learn from this story as well. And I encourage everyone to pick up their copy. The book is called The Horse and the Fox by author Steve James from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online at the brick and mortar stores. Those are just a few of the locations. And Steve, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me, and God bless you.
Our next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, I'm really excited to find out more about because it really portrays a lot of qualities that I think we should all aspire to. And of course, I think it's the kind of story that's going to put a smile on your face. The book is called The Little Brown Hero Dog by author James Jernigan from Fulton Books. James, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Now tell everybody a little about this story.
Well, this story was inspired by me growing up in the Vietnam era, and of course losing two of my best friends in Vietnam. And we're dog lovers. And we have a dog named Boudreaux that's mischievous and fits everything in the book.
What can people expect as far as the story goes?
Well, they can expect, like growing up in small town America, we had a great childhood, and I guess my name should have been Boudreaux because I was mischievous, and it shows some of that in the book, and then it shows progressing on into the loyalty of animals and people and faith and parents that grew up in the Depression and came through World War I and II and just instilled in us a love for country. And we stand for the flag and we kneel for the cross. And that is kind of our philosophy.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to get this book published and to share your story?
Megan was, I guess you'd call my publicist, fantastic. I cannot say anything but give her A+, A+, A+. I've never published anything. I had a dream, and they walked me right through it. I can't say enough about it. They were phenomenal.
Now, have you thought about writing another story, maybe another story about Boudreaux, or do you have anything else you're working on?
Yes, my veterinarian and I are good friends. He was a highly decorated soldier vet in Iraq, and my brother was served in the first Desert Storm. Well, anyway, he can't put in words, and he worked with all the service animals. He wants me and him to sit down. If you notice, the last line in the book said, keep watch, Boudreaux's coming out of retirement. He's going to tell me the stories, and we're going to co-write some more service dogs that were in Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan. Hope to get started on that maybe latter part of summer, early fall.
Oh, great. Well, we look forward to that. Now, this book, The Little Brown Hero Dog, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message that comes across?
Oh, gosh, I guess the love for animals. You know, a good dog, all he ever expects is just a pat on the head, lay next to you, take him with you. You don't have to buy him a car. You don't have to put him through college. He's just there. He's yours. He's there for you. And I want people to understand when they get these animals, they become part of you. They're part of your family.
Well, I think this is going to be a fantastic story. And, you know, those principles, those things that I think people are going to see in Boudreaux in this story, I think they could apply those things to their own life. And I encourage everyone to pick up this heartwarming story. The book is called The Little Brown Hero Dog by author James Jernigan from Fulton Books. You can get your copy today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, online, as well as at the brick-and-mortar stores. And, James, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, and we'll look forward to the next one.
If you're looking for a book of encouragement, hope, and inspiration, this next book in the Friday Night Author Roundtable is the book you're looking for. The book is called The Shelf, Faith, PTSD, and Overcoming Me by author David K. DeRemer from Christian Faith Publishing. David, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Now tell everybody a little bit about your book.
Well, it kind of takes you on a journey in my life from early childhood through my military retirement and beyond, just through relationships as a kid and as an adult, and just how God very carefully and purposefully walked me through 40-plus years of my life, away from near suicide as a kid and as an adult, and into this brand new world of grace and forgiveness and hope and success. And some of the things in my life would be hard for me to even believe if I hadn't lived them myself, with how, looking back, God put me in certain situations and the reasons for it. So, if you have faith and trust in God, and a lot of great things will happen. So that's kind of what it's about, just how you can go from being down and out to having true success.
Now, what inspired you to tell your story and share this with everyone?
Faith is kind of what drives me, and I'll never forget the night I was sitting on a couch and I was watching one of the NBC special, Jesus Christ Superstar, or whatever was on TV, and I just felt a calling that I needed to tell my story. So, that's generally how I live my life, is kind of follow God's lead when I feel He's tugging at me, and just felt that, my story could help people as I, was going through 40 years of my life and putting it all down on paper. And with all the things that have happened since then, I'd say that God truly had a plan for me to use the book and my experiences to help other people, and that's really what's inspired me.
Now, how was it for you working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to get your book out there and your message out there?
Working with Christian Faith Publishing was great. They certainly made the process easy. Definitely grateful to all the people who helped make the book such a success, because if it wasn't for them, a lot of the things that have happened since may not have happened. So it's a great bunch of people always working hard for you, and just communication was great, and it was just overall a great success.
When people read this, what do you hope is the most important message that comes across from your book?
The most important message of this book is for people to just have faith and never lose hope. Despite all the negative things we go through, and no matter how dark the road seems, there's always a way, a resource, a tool, a person, anyone who can help you find light at the end of the tunnel. I know when I'm speaking about my book or giving a speech or talking to groups of people now, I break my book down into 3 parts: the fear, the fight, and the faith. And it really is that clear outline of how life happens to people, and how it should be viewed. A lot of people don't get past the fight part. but, we just can't live in fear. You have to stay positive and be better, and just letting people know that the right people and the right resources are out there and to fight for it. And, if you can have the right mindset, life is pretty good. And, I had my moment when I didn't want to do life anymore, and it's a place I never thought I'd be, but I found myself there, and it helped me understand that everybody has their stuff. But I was thankful to be able to fight my fear and find my faith, and life's good. And I just want everyone who's struggling to just realize that it can get better and see life the way that I do now after having been through so much.
To have that hope and that light at the end of the tunnel is a great thing, and I think this book is going to be a great resource for that. The book is called The Shelf: Faith, PTSD, and Overcoming Me by author David K. DeRemer from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick and mortar stores, just a handful of the locations. And David, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Friday Night Author Roundtable. We'll be back next week with another great group of talented authors to discuss their books, their process, and their accomplishments. Have a great weekend, everyone.